He tossed the money onto the bed, a fortune in crisp bills scattering across the red quilt. And then he was on me, his weight pinning me down like an anchor in a storm. His eyes, dark and hungry, devoured me. "You said I wasn't good enough," he murmured, his breath hot against my ear. "I have the money now. So what's it going to be?" My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror and a strange, unwelcome thrill. This was it. The moment my carefully constructed world was about to shatter. But to understand how I ended up here, trapped beneath the gaze of the man I was supposed to despise, the villain of this very story, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to a wedding night that felt more like an execution. I never imagined my life would end only to begin again inside the pages of a boy love novel. More than that, I never imagined I'd be cast as the story Eurostrade's most despised character, Vincent Lee, the cruel, materialistic ex-husband of the main villain. Yet, Farter Eurostrade's precisely where I found myself. My back pressed against the splintered wood of an old bedroom wall, my hands clutching a crimson quilt as if it were a shield. The man before me, my so-called husband, was Wesley Reed. He was a mountain of a man, a hulking figure whose broad shoulders filled the doorway and whose presence seemed to suck all the air from the room. His face was a masterpiece of harsh lines and stark beauty, a jawline sharp enough to cut glass, eyes as dark and deep as a starless night, and a permanent scowl that promised nothing but trouble. The air was thick with the scent of old timber, damp earth, and the faint, masculine smell of Wesley Eurostrade's sweat. My lungs felt tight, and a wave of panic threatened to pull me under. He was moving with an agonizing slowness, his calloused fingers working at the buttons of his flannel shirt. Each undone button was a tick of a clock counting down to my doom. My mind was screaming, "This wasna Eurostrade my life. This wasna Eurostrade my body." And hidden beneath these borrowed clothes was a secret, a fundamental truth about myself that I couldn't let him, of all people, discover. "Are you just going to stand there staring, or are you going to use your mouth for something other than gaping?" Wesley Eurostrade's voice was a low rumble, the sound of gravel grinding under a heavy boot. His eyes were like daggers, pinning me to the wall, and I felt utterly transparent, as if he could see straight through the facade to the terrified soul cowering inside. I forced myself to swallow, to find my voice and make it sound like the arrogant monster I was supposed to be. "Don't you dare come any closer, Wesley. The scent of poverty clings to you, and I refuse to be tainted by it." I tilted my chin up, a gesture of defiance that felt utterly hollow. I had to play this part perfectly. The original Vincent was a truly despicable human being, greedy, cruel, and destined for a gruesome end. I was not him, but my survival depended on everyone believing I was. Wesley paused, his deliberate unbuttoning, his hand hovering over his chest. His jaw tightened, a muscle flexing in his cheek. "Are you telling me I can't Eurostrade touch my own husband?" His tone was laced with danger, a challenge I knew I had to meet. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the quilt tighter. "Farter Eurostrade's exactly what I Eurostrade am telling you. You are Eurostrade nothing but a dirt poor farmer, Wesley. This piece of paper we signed does na Eurostrade give you the right to put your hands on me. I Eurostrade am not that cheap." A slight tremor betrayed me at the end, a crack in the icy facade. I prayed he hadn't Eurostrade noticed. This wasn't just about avoiding an unwanted wedding night. This was about derailing the entire catastrophic plot. In the novel, Vincent humiliates Wesley, bleeds him dry to finance the college education of the story Eurostrade's golden boy, Troy, and ultimately pays the price by becoming food for the fishes. That was a fate I had no intention of repeating. He took a step forward, and I instinctively flinched, trying to merge with the wall behind me. The scent of him intensified Euro's earth and tobacco, a strangely intoxicating combination that was messing with my senses. He reached into his pocket, not for me, but for a crumpled pack of cigarettes. He shook one out, struck a match against the wall, and the sudden flare of light threw his rugged features into sharp, demonic relief. He took a long drag, the tip of the cigarette glowing like a malevolent eye, and exhaled a plume of smoke that swirled around us. The acrid smell filled my lungs, and I fought the urge to cough. "Put that out," I snapped, waving a hand in front of my face. "Eater Euros trade s disgusting." He didn't Euros trade tea. Instead, he leaned in, his face so close I could see the faint stubble on his jaw. The smoke was a veil between us. 2 months, Vincent, he said, his voice dropping to a low, deadly whisper. You have 2 months. And then, Euros trade am claiming what belongs to me. My face flushed with a heat more intense than the match he Euros trade D just struck. The audacity, the raw, shameless declaration sent a tremor through me. This man truly was the villain of the story, and not of something I couldn't identify as pure fear twisted in my gut. I instinctively clutched my abdomen, hoping he wouldn't Euros trade T see the trembling in my hands. Without another word, Wesley turned and stalked out of the room, the old door groaning shut behind him. Through the grime-streaked window, I saw him grab a shovel from the porch. He began to dig in the yard, each powerful strike of the tool cleaving the hard-packed earth. It was as if he was picturing my body in that hole, burying his frustration one shovelful at a time. I finally let out the breath Euros trade D been holding, my body slumping down the wall until I was a heap on the floor, the red quilt still tangled in my fists. There was no magical system prompt, no welcome package for transmigrators, no cheat codes to help me navigate this nightmare. Still, I tried. System, I whispered into the suffocating silence. Hello, is anyone there? Only the creaking of the old house answered. Of course, I was utterly alone, armed with nothing but my flawed memory of a story that had once been my guilty pleasure, my escape from a difficult life. It had been my sexual awakening, too, if I was being brutally honest. But living inside its pages, that was a different kind of hell. I pushed myself up and collapsed onto the bed, the mattress springs groaning in protest. The original Vincent was a fool of epic proportions. He threw away a man like Wesley Euros, a man who, for all his flaws, was fiercely loyal Euros for Troy. The novella Euros trade S charismatic protagonist who would use and discard him on his climb to the top. Wesley was the tragic villain, a man broken by life and betrayed by everyone he trusted, especially the man he married. Especially me. I groaned, covering my face with my hands. How could I possibly survive this? My biggest secret, the truth of my physical body, was a ticking time bomb. What would Wesley do if he found out? Would he be disgusted? Would he hate me even more? The quilt was soft beneath my fingertips, a stark contrast to the sharp edges of my panic. I knew the plot, but I wasn't the character. I was just a guy who had spent his entire life feeling like an outcast, hiding his differences, and just trying to get by. And now I was married to a man who could snap me in two, a man who had just promised to a circumflex Euros claimer Euros trade me in 2 months. What did that even mean? I risked another glance out the window. Wesley was still there, his shirt now soaked with sweat and clinging to the powerful muscles of his back. Every swing of that shovel felt like a second ticking off a clock. 2 months. My secret was living on borrowed time, and so was I. I needed a plan, and I needed it now. Otherwise, I would end up exactly like the character I was inhabiting, alone, broke, and very, very dead. The first rays of morning light sliced through the thin curtains, finding me sprawled across the bed, a tangled mess of limbs and quilted cotton. I was trying to reconstruct the events that had led me to this bizarre reality when the warm, comforting aroma of freshly baked bread pulled me from my stupor. Wesley Eurostrade's mother, Tim, was already in the kitchen, a whirlwind of gentle activity with a dusting of flour on her apron. She was humming a cheerful, old-fashioned tune, and a sharp pang of guilt struck me for the role I was about to play. The original Vincent had been cruel to this kind woman, and while the thought of doing the same made my stomach churn, I had to maintain my cover. "Vincent, breakfast is on the table," Tim called out, her voice as warm and inviting as the bread she was slicing. I dragged myself to the small kitchen table where a simple spread of homemade rolls and a steaming bowl of oatmeal awaited. My stomach rumbled in appreciation, but I forced my lips into a disdainful sneer, summoning the spirit of the old Vincent. "Is this all you have? Not even any butter?" I muttered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Tim didn't Eurostrade even flinch. She just offered a patient smile. "Wesley Eurostrade's gone to the store to get some. Sit down and eat, dear." Before I could offer another snide remark, the man himself strode in. He tossed a small paper bag onto the table without looking at me. Inside were 2 fluffy, white rolls, clearly from the town bakery and far superior to the rustic ones Tim had made. "Eat," he grunted, and then he was gone again, heading back out the door with his work boots in hand. I stared at the rolls, a strange warmth spreading from my fingers through my chest. It was such a small thing, but it felt significant, like a quiet rebuttal to my insults from the night before. This was the Wesley from the Booker Euros, a man whose thoughtful actions were often buried beneath a gruff, intimidating exterior. I took a bite of the bread. It was ridiculously good, practically melting on my tongue. Tim slid a hard-boiled egg onto my plate, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "You are Eurostrade too thin, Vincent. You need to eat more." I mumbled a thank you, a lump forming in my throat. The plot of this 1980s era novel swirled in my mind. It was a time and place where men like Wesley worked themselves to the bone just to survive. He was painted as the villain because life had systematically broken him, first with his father Eurostrade's untimely death, and then with his mother Eurostrade's illness, which had shattered his dreams of attending college. The original Vincent had only poured salt in those wounds, siphoning Wesley's meager savings to fund the ambitions of Troy Harris, the golden boy destined for success with the help of a wealthy city slicker boyfriend. I was not that Vincent, but I was trapped in his skin, and every move felt like I was navigating a minefield. By midday, Tim was outside feeding the chickens, and I was left alone with my spiraling thoughts. I had to change the narrative. I had to prevent Wesley from spiraling into the self-destructive path laid out for him. But how? My own body was the more immediate, more dangerous problem. If he ever discovered how different I truly was, what would happen? I had spent my entire previous life hiding it, avoiding mirrors, and keeping everyone at arm's length. Corrective surgeries were a distant dream, costing thousands of dollars I never had. A stable relationship was an even more impossible fantasy. Who would knowingly sign up for a partner who was neither one thing nor the other? Timur Eurostrade's voice broke through my bleak reverie. She was holding out a metal lunchbox. "Take this out to Wesley. He Eurostrade's working in the far fields. The sun is brutal today." I hesitated, my first instinct to refuse, but the hopeful, expectant look in her eyes was my undoing. "Sure, Eurostrade LL, take it," I said, grabbing a wide-brimmed hat from a peg by the door. The walk to the fields was short, but the heat was suffocating, plastering my shirt to my skin with sweat. Wesley was out there, his shirt discarded, swinging a hoe with a vengeance as if the earth itself had wronged him. The muscles in his back and arms flexed with each powerful movement, his tanned skin gleaming in the harsh sunlight. I found myself staring, my body reacting with a jolt of heat that had nothing to do with the sun. A group of other farmhands, lounging in the shade of a large oak tree, noticed me first. "Hey, Wesley, your Marner Eurostrade's here with your lunch," one of them yelled, a wide, teasing grin on his face. Another one chimed in, his voice carrying easily across the field. "What should we call him? Mrs. Reed?" The group erupted in laughter, and I felt my face burn with a humiliating flush. Wesley straightened up, wiping his brow with the back of his arm. "His name is Vincent," he said, his voice firm and carrying an unmistakable note of that instantly silenced them. "And he Eurostrade's shy." His eyes then locked onto mine, and I felt like an insect pinned under a magnifying glass. I marched forward and thrust the lunchbox at him. "Here, Donna Eurostrade, want you starving to death." He took it, his calloused fingers brushing against mine, and I snatched my hand back as if Eurostrade been burned. "Why did you come all the way out here?" he asked, his voice low, tinged with what sounded like genuine curiosity. "Tim made me," I lied, my gaze fixed on a patch of dirt by his boots. The truth that a part of me had wanted to see him, to bring him his lunch felt like a weakness I couldn't afford to show. My body was staging its own rebellion. A familiar, mortifying dampness was spreading where it shouldn't. Eurostrade, a physical manifestation of my stress and unwanted attraction. I had to leave now before he sensed something was wrong. "Go home, Vincent. Eurostrade's too hot for you out here," he said, taking a half-step closer, his large frame blocking the relentless sun. His shadow fell over me like a shield, and for a fleeting, dangerous moment, I wanted to stay right there. But then he leaned in, just a fraction, and the scent of Hemer tobacco and warm earthy filled my senses, sending my pulse into a frantic, chaotic rhythm. I was too sensitive, too hyper-aware of the small space between our bodies. "Eurostrade, am fine," I snapped, turning on my heel. "Eat quickly and get back to work." My voice was sharper than I intended, brittle with panic. I was halfway back down the path before I heard a low, rumbling chuckle that was equal parts amused and dangerous. I didn't dare look back. My secret was safe for now, but every single moment I spent in Wesley Reeder Eurostrade's presence felt like I was dancing on a razor Eurostrade's edge. One wrong move, one slip, and my entire world would come crashing down. Sweat trickled down my temples as I trudged back from the fields, the empty lunchbox swinging from my hand. Wesley Eurostrade's deep chuckle was still echoing in my ears, a sound that made my stomach clench in a way I refused to analyze. I was about halfway back to the farmhouse when a voice cut through the afternoon haze, stopping me in my tracks. "Vincent, hold up." It was Troy Harris, leaning nonchalantly against a fence post, the very picture of boyish charm and calculated confidence. His blonde hair was a halo in the sunlight, and his smile was just a degree shy of being a smug sneer. In the novel, he was the hero, the golden boy who got everything he ever wanted: a college education, a wealthy lover, a brilliant future. Right now, though, he was looking at me like I was a particularly interesting bug he was about to dissect. "What do you want, Troy?" I asked, my tone as flat and unwelcoming as I could make it. I didn't trust him one bit. The original Vincent had been utterly infatuated with him, stupidly funneling all of Weslayer Eurostrade's hard-earned money into Troy's dreams. I wasn't that person, but Troy did Eurostrade know that. He pushed himself off the fence, crossing his arms over his chest. "Just checking in. How are Eurostrade's married life treating you? Must be a bit of a step down, slumming it with a guy like Wesley." His eyes swept over me, probing for any sign of weakness. I felt a surge of irritation, but I kept my expression impassive. "Eater Eurostrade's fine. Better than groveling for handouts." My jab hit its mark. His smile flickered for a fraction of a second. "Funny," he said, recovering quickly. "Speaking of which, are you still good for that promise you made about the money?" His voice dropped, and a predatory glint appeared in his eyes that made my skin crawl. I froze. The promise? Of course. The original Vincent had promised to give Troy all of his wedding money to pay for college tuition. What a complete and utter moron. "Tharter Eurostrade's not happening," I said, crossing my arms to mirror his posture. "Go find someone else to leech off of." Troy Eurostrade's easygoing grin morphed into something sharp and cruel. "Be careful, Vincent. I know things you wouldn't Eurostrade want getting out." He leaned closer, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Like how you are Eurostrade no to Euros you." My heart stumbled, missing a beat. He couldn't Eurostrade possibly know. He couldn't Eurostrade know I was a transmigrator. It was impossible. I forced a laugh, but it came out as a shaky, unconvincing sound. "What are you talking about? You think I Eurostrade am some kind of imposter? You have any proof of that, Troy?" I took a step toward him, trying to turn the pressure back on him. "Or are you just making things up because you are Eurostrade desperate?" His eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, a large shadow fell over both of us. A deep voice cut through the tense air, low and laced with menace. "What are Eurostrade's this about?" Wesley was standing right behind me, closer than I had realized. His presence felt like a gathering storm. I turned to see him glaring at Troy, his jaw set like stone. "Eater Eurostrade's nothing," I said quickly, but Wesley was already in motion. In one fluid movement, he reached out, grabbed my arm, and pulled me back against his solid chest. His grip was firm, possessive, but not painful. "Let Eurostrade's go, Vincent. Eater Eurostrade's too hot to be standing out here arguing." His tone was final, leaving no room for negotiation. Troy opened his mouth to protest, but one look from Wesley silenced him. I tried to pull my arm free, but Weslayer Eurostrade's grip was like iron. Before I could process what was happening, the world tilted sideways. I was suddenly slung over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. "Wesley, put me down," I hissed, my fists pounding ineffectually against his broad back. His hand came to rest on my upper thigh, dangerously high, dangerously close to the secret I was so desperate to protect. If he shifted his hand just a few inches higher, it would all be over. "Stop squirming," he grunted, striding toward the house as if I weighed nothing. My face was burning with humiliation as I caught a glimpse of Troyer Eurostrade's stunned expression fading into the distance. Panic clawed at my throat, and I thrashed harder. "Wesley," I said, "put me down. You carna Eurostrade T Juster Euros Dona Eurostrade T touch me." He stopped abruptly and set me back on my feet, but he didn't let go. His eyes were dark, turbulent pools, like a storm about to break. "Vincent," he said, his voice low and raw with an emotion I couldn't place. "I am trying to be patient with you, but you are making it incredibly difficult." He advanced on me, and I retreated until my back hit the wooden railing of the porch. "You do nothing but push me away." "Why?" I swallowed against a suddenly dry throat. "Because I don't Eurostrade T want you touching me," I snapped, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. It wasn't Eurostrade T entirely true, but it was the only defense I had. I couldn't let him get close, not when my body was a liability. "War Eurostrade re not my type, okay. War Eurostrade re too rough. €2 everything." His jaw clenched, and for a terrifying second, I thought he was going to call my bluff, to force the issue. Instead, he took a step back, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Fine, have it your way." He turned and walked into the house, leaving me standing alone on the porch, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The screen door slammed shut, the sound echoing the turmoil in my chest. Troyer Eurostrade's words gnawed at me. He either knew something impossible, or he was making a dangerously accurate guess. Either way, it meant trouble, and Wesley Euro's god, Wesley. I hadn't Eurostrade T meant to push him away so cruelly. But what other choice did I have? I couldn't let him discover the truth about me Euros, not the transmigration, and especially not the secret my body held. I leaned against the railing, trying to force my lungs to work properly. The neat, predictable plot of the novel was unraveling, and I was the one pulling at the threads. Wesley wasn't supposed to be this intense, this protective, not yet. But the way he had looked at me, the way he had stood between me and Troy as if I was his to protect her Euros, it was messing with my head. I finally went inside, bypassing the kitchen, where Tim was humming her gentle tunes. My mind was a chaotic race of thoughts. Troy's threat meant my time was running out. And Wesley Eurostrade's reaction told me his patience was wearing thin. 2 months, he had said. 2 months until what? Until he proved he wasn't the broke farmer I'd accused him of being, or something else entirely. I collapsed onto my bed, staring up at the water-stained ceiling. I had to stay on my guard, maintain my distance, and figure out exactly what Troy Harris knew before he could detonate the bomb he was holding over my head. But as I closed my eyes, the only thing I could see was Wesley Eurostrade's face, etched with hurt and frustration. And the only thing I could feel was the ghost of his hand on my skin. Dust motes danced in the morning sunbeams as I paced the length of the wooden porch. The air was crisp, a sharp contrast to the heated turmoil in my mind. Wesley had been gone since before dawn, leaving behind only the faint, lingering scent of his last cigarette. Inside, I could hear Tim sorting laundry, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing under her own roof. For days now, Wesley had been a phantom, leaving before I woke and returning long after I Eurostrade D retreated to the bedroom. I hadn't Eurostrade T missed the fresh bruises on his knuckles last night, though. He was involved in something that put that hardened look in his eyes, and it was setting my teeth on edge. The irony was bitter. I was supposed to be the one causing trouble, not him. Tim poked her head out the screen door, a laundry basket propped on her hip. "Vincent, have you seen Wesley? He missed breakfast again." Her brow was furrowed with concern, and I hated the knot of guilt that twisted in my stomach. She didn't Eurostrade deserve to worry. And if I was being honest, neither did Wesley. But I was so mired in my own complicated mess that I didn't know how to begin fixing theirs. Eurostrade's probably just working, I said, attempting a casual shrug that felt stiff and unnatural. "You know how he is." Tim nodded, though she didn't Eurostrade look convinced, and retreated back into the house. I slumped against the railing, my mind replaying the previous night. Wesley had come home late, a fresh cut on his cheek and a thick wad of cash in his pocket, which he Eurostrade quickly hidden. He claimed he Eurostrade taken a fall, but I wasn't Eurostrade an idiot. He was hustling, working some dangerous side job, and I had a sinking feeling it was because of me. His words from our wedding night, that 2-month deadline to claim me, hung over me like a guillotine Eurostrade's blade. I stalked into the yard and grabbed a rake, needing a physical outlet for my anxiety. The novella Eurostrade's plot was careening off course. In the original story, Wesley only started his side hustle in the clothing business after the original Vincent had completely drained his finances. Now, he was jumping ahead, and I was the cause, the butterfly whose flapping wings were about to unleash a hurricane. He was making money this fast because I had called him a broke nobody. The guilt was a physical ache, but fear was a sharper pain. If he succeeded, if he got what he wanted, he would get closer. And if he got closer, my secrets couldn't Eurostrade possibly stay hidden. "Vincent," Timur Eurostrade's voice broke my train of thought. She was standing on the porch, holding the old rotary phone, her expression a strange mix of confusion and pride. "That was Wesley. He Eurostrade's in the city," he said. "Selling clothes. He says he Eurostrade's making very good money." She paused, her frown deepening. "Why is he so desperate for cash all of a sudden?" I froze, the handle of the rake suddenly slick in my sweaty palms. "I don't Eurostrade know," I mumbled, but my mind was screaming the answer. "Eater Eurostrade's because of me. He Eurostrade's doing all of this because of what I said. Because I hurt his pride." My chest felt tight, constricted. I turned back to the scattered leaves, raking with a frantic, punishing energy. I had to get out. I had to escape before Wesley Eurostrade's 2-month ultimatum arrived. If he discovered that my body was different, or worse, that I wasn't Eurostrade even the real Vincent Lee, I was finished. I decided I needed to start training. If I was going to make a run for it, I needed to be physically capable. The original Vincent was pathetically weak, and frankly, I wasn't much better. My unique physical condition made strenuous activity a painful gamble. I tried jogging around the perimeter of the yard, but after only 2 laps, my lungs were burning and my legs felt like jelly. I collapsed onto the grass, my shirt soaked through, cursing my own weakness. This was hopeless. I'd Eurostrade never be able to outrun Wesley, and I'd Eurostrade never be able to outrun this plot. That night, I woke up aching. My arms and legs were covered in faint, circular bruises. I stared at them in the dim moonlight filtering through the window, my mind reeling with confusion. They weren't mosquito bites. The marks were too uniform, too deliberate. A cold dread washed over me. Was Wesley sneaking into my room at night, touching me while I slept? No, he wouldn't. Would he? I tried to dismiss the thought as paranoid fantasy, but it lingered, making my skin crawl. The next morning, Wesley was back, looking even more exhausted than before. He was at the kitchen table, devouring a stack of Teamer Eurostrade pancakes when I walked in. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, his gaze lingering for a moment on my neck before he looked away. I could have sworn I saw the ghost of a smirk on his lips. "You are Eurostrade re-up early," he said, his voice a low rumble, as if he knew a secret I didn't. "Couldn't a Eurostrade tea sleep?" I muttered, grabbing a plate. My hands trembled as I poured myself a coffee, and I desperately hoped he wouldn't notice. Tim was chattering away about some neighborhood gossip, but I could feel Wesley Eurostrade's gaze on me, heavy and unreadable. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, the mysterious bruises on my body throbbing beneath the fabric of my long-sleeved shirt. "Vincent, we Eurostrade rebuilding a new house," Wesley announced suddenly, cutting his mother off mid-sentence. "The contractors are coming tomorrow. I need you and Mar to keep an eye on them." He stood, brushed the crumbs from his jeans, and walked out the door without another word. Tim and I exchanged a stunned look. "A house?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Where on earth is he getting the money for that?" I forced a laugh, but my mind was spinning. A new house meant he was making serious money far faster than I had ever anticipated. The plot was accelerating, and my half-baked escape plans were turning to dust. I had to move faster, but my body was failing me, and these damn bruises were a terrifying, unexplained mystery. I watched the door Wesley had just walked through, his broad back disappearing toward the fields. He was out there building an empire, all for me, and I was in here, planning to run away from the only person who had ever looked at me like I might actually be worth something. I went to my room and pulled a dusty duffel bag from under the bed. I couldn't Eurostrade stay. If Wesley was this driven, this determined, he would want answers soon, and I had none to give him. I began stuffing a few shirts into the bag, my hands shaking uncontrollably. But as I folded a soft sweater Tim had given me, my resolve began to crumble. An image of Wesley Eurostrade's face flashed in my mind. The quiet intensity in his eyes, the small gesture of the bakery bread, the way his shadow had shielded me from the sun. I cursed myself, shoving the bag back under the bed. Running away was the logical, intelligent thing to do. So why did it feel so profoundly wrong? The sharp crackle of firecrackers sliced through the festive hum of the crowd. The new house was finished. It was a sturdy, two-story structure that loomed over every other dilapidated shack in this dusty town, a monument to Wesley Eurostrade's relentless ambition. He was the talk of the town, the local boy who had gone from dirt poor farmer to burgeoning tycoon in a matter of months. I stood awkwardly in the yard, surrounded by neighbors who were slapping Wesley on the back and raising glasses to his success. Tim was beaming, her hand clutching my arm as if I were her anchor in this overwhelming new reality. But I was the one who was barely holding on. My duffel bag was packed and waiting under the bed. Tonight was my last chance to run. My last opportunity to escape before Wesley decided to collect on the promise he Eurostrade made on our wedding night. He was across the yard, deep in conversation with a town mayor, the fabric of his flannel shirt stretching taut across his powerful shoulders. He happened to look up, his eyes finding mine across the sea of people. A slow, confident half-smile touched his lips, a look that sent my pulse into a chaotic frenzy. I quickly turned away, feigning an interest in the buttons on my jacket. The air was thick with the smells of barbecue smoke and cheap beer, but all I could think about was what would happen when the last guest left. My secret, the truth of my body, could not survive the kind of intimacy he was determined to have. And Troy's threat about my true identity still hung over me, a venomous snake coiled in the shadows. I slipped away from the party and into the new house, desperate for a moment of quiet. The bedroom was silent, the same red quilt from our old life spread neatly over the brand new bed. I was just reaching under the bed for my bag when the door creaked open behind me. Wesley stepped inside, his heavy work boots thudding on the polished floorboards. He was holding a black leather satchel, and before I could utter a word, he turned it upside down. Stacks upon stacks of cash tumbled out onto the quilt, the crisp bills fanning out like a silent, powerful accusation. My heart stopped beating. "Count it," he commanded, his voice low and intense, his eyes locked on mine. The smile was gone, replaced by the predatory focus of a hunter who had finally cornered his prey. I backed away until I hit the wall, shaking my head. "It looks like plenty. You don't euros trade T need me to count it." My voice was a thin, reedy thing, betraying the sheer panic that was clawing its way up my throat. He had done it. He had made his fortune, just as he had sworn he would. 2 months had passed. My time was up. Wesley closed the distance between us, his large frame crowding me, making the room feel small and suffocating. "Vincent, come here." It wasn't euros trade T a request, it was an order. His hand reached for me, and I dodged, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "Wesley, don't euros trade T," I pleaded, but he was too fast. He caught me around the waist and pulled me down onto the bed with him. The cash scattered like autumn leaves as I found myself pinned beneath his body. His weight was substantial, but he was being careful, holding himself up on his elbows as if reining in his own strength. He lowered his head, his lips brushing against my ear. The question came again, the one I had seen in his eyes at the start. "You said I wasn't euros trade T good enough. I got money now, so what are euros trade S it going to be?" His eyes were dark, bottomless pits of raw hunger, and I felt like I was drowning in them. I pushed against his chest, but it was like trying to move a brick wall. "Eater euros trade S not about the money," I blurted out, my voice cracking, my secrets a single, frantic heartbeat away from being exposed. I couldn't euros trade T let him undress me, not like this. Desperation gave me a surge of strength, and I twisted, trying to wriggle free, but his grip simply tightened. It wasn't euros trade T painful, just utterly, completely unyielding. "Stop fighting me," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "What are you so scared of, Vincent?" The question struck me like a physical blow, and all the fight went out of me. My breathing was ragged, my body limp beneath his. He was so close, far too close, and my treacherous body was responding in ways I couldn't control. The humiliating dampness between my legs was back, a stark reminder of the secret I was hiding. I couldn't do this. I couldn't let him see. But as I looked up, his eyes were searching mine, and for the first time, I saw something other than desire in their depths. I saw genuine worry. I took a shaky breath, the words tumbling out before I could censor them. "Weslayer euros ir euros trade M different. My body euros eater euros trade S not normal. Ir euros trade M noter euros just a die." My face was on fire with shame. I braced myself for the disgust, for the inevitable revulsion, for him to shove me away and storm out of the room forever. Instead, he just froze, his grip on me loosening. Then, slowly, carefully, he moved, shifting his weight to pull me into a hug. His arms wrapped around me, strong and secure, a shield against the world. "Vincent," he said, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't Eurostrade begin to name. "You are Eurostrade not different. You are Eurostrade mine. You are Eurostrade a damn treasure. Do you hear me?" His words were fierce, a declaration, and I could feel the steady, powerful beat of his heart against my cheek. I blinked, stunned into silence. What? My voice was barely a whisper. I had prepared myself for any reaction but this. I was ready for rejection. "Noter Euros this. You don't Eurostrade care. That ire Eurostrade mar Euros both." He pulled back just enough to look me in the eye, one of his large, calloused hands coming up to cup my face. "Care? Hell, Vincent, ire Eurostrade been watching you since the first day. You think I didn't Eurostrade notice how you flinch every time I get close? How you hide yourself? I don't Eurostrade give a damn what are Eurostrade under your clothes. You are you, and Tharter Eurostrade all that matters." And knot in my throat tightened, and I fought against the sting of tears. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. Not in my old life, not ever. A part of me screamed to believe him, but years of ingrained shame and fear couldn't be erased in a single moment. "You are Eurostrade crazy," I muttered, but my voice wobbled and he heard it. A slow grin spread across his face, the first genuine, unguarded smile I had ever seen from him. "Crazy for you," he said. The line was so cheesy it was almost comical, but then he leaned in and pressed a soft, deliberate kiss to my forehead, and I felt myself melting against him, all my defenses dissolving. "No more running, okay? Whatever it is you are Eurostrade scared of, we Eurostrade figure it out together." I could only nod, too overwhelmed to speak. The money was still scattered all around us, a meaningless backdrop to this life-altering moment. One of my secrets was out, and Wesley was still here, holding me as if I wasn't a freak, as if I was something precious. For the first time since ire Eurostrade woken up in this world, I felt a fragile sense of belonging. But as he pulled me closer, Troyer Eurostrade's insidious threat echoed in my mind. He knew I wasn't Eurostrade the real Vincent. If that truth ever came to light, this delicate, beautiful moment could shatter into a million pieces. I buried my face in Wesley Eurostrade's chest, clinging to his warmth, trying to memorize the feeling while it lasted. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels on the track was a steady, hypnotic sound, but it wasn't enough to quiet the storm in my head. I was curled against Wesley Eurostrade's side, his arm a heavy, comforting weight around my shoulders as the distant city skyline grew steadily larger. Across the aisle, Tim was chatting animatedly with an old friend she Eurostrade run into, her bright laughter occasionally cutting through the low hum of the train car. We were on our way to the city, to a new life in a house that Wesley had bought, a house he described as a mansion. My name was on the deed, a fact that still felt like some kind of elaborate fever dream. I clutched a bag of chips he had bought for me at the station, my fingers fidgeting nervously with the crinkling plastic. Everything was happening so fast, and I was struggling to keep up. Troyer Eurostrade's threat was a constant, low-level hum of anxiety in the back of my mind. He knew I wasn't Eurostrade the Vincent of this world, and that knowledge was a bomb just waiting for him to light the fuse. I hadn't Eurostrade told Wesley. How could I, after he had so completely and unconditionally accepted my first, more intimate secret? His words from that night, calling me a treasure, still echoed in my heart, a warm and steadying presence. But they didn't Eurostrade to erase the fear of what was to come. If Troy decided to torque, would Wesley still look at me the same way? I leaned more heavily into his side, as if trying to absorb his strength. "War Eurostrade required," Wesley murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. His fingers brushed against the sensitive skin of my neck, and a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold ran down my spine. "What are Eurostrades eating you?" "Nothing," I lied, quickly popping a chip into my mouth to avoid his searching gaze. He didn't Eurostrade to believe me, I could tell by the subtle tightening of his jaw. But he didn't Eurostrade to push. Instead, he pulled a tangerine from his coat pocket and began to peel it, his large, calloused fingers moving with surprising precision. The sharp, clean scent of citrus cut through the stale air of the train, and I watched, mesmerized, as he methodically stripped away the skin. "Eat," he said, holding out a perfect segment. I took it, our fingers brushing for a fraction of a second, and my stupid heart did a little flip. He was far too good at this, at making me feel safe and cared for when I knew I was anything but. I mumbled a thank you, chewing slowly, letting the sweet tang of the fruit ground me in the present moment. We arrived in the city as dusk was painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The house was more than a mansion. It was unreal. A sprawling brick edifice with tall, elegant windows and a sprawling garden in the back. It was a world away from the dusty, ranchical farmhouse we had left behind. Tim gasped, muttering that it was far too big, but Wesley just shrugged. "Eater Eurostrades ours now. We Eurostrade LL get used to it." I was still gaping at the sheer scale of the place when he pressed a folded document into my hand. It was the deed. My name was there, in bold print, right next to his. "For you," he said, his eyes soft. "So you always know you are Eurostrade re-home." I clutched the paper, a lump forming in my throat. "You are Eurostrade re-completely insane," I managed to mutter, but I was smiling, and he knew it. Later, as we were surrounded by boxes, I pulled him aside. "Wesley, I have an idea. This clothing hustle of yours is brilliant, but Eater Eurostrades not sustainable. Sooner or later, others will copy what you are Eurostrade redoing. You should start your own brand, create your own designs, open your own stores, maybe even franchise it." His eyes lit up with a fire I recognized Euros, the same fire he had when he was digging in the yard, a fierce, unstoppable determination. He grabbed my face between his hands and kissed me hard and full of excitement. "You are Eurostrade a damn genius," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "We Eurostrade LL do it together." My cheeks burned, but I nodded, caught up in the whirlwind of his energy. That night, we sat at the new kitchen table, sketching out business plans on napkins and laughing over ridiculous potential brand names until Tim finally told us to go to sleep. The days blurred into a whirlwind of weeks. Wesley was a force of nature, transforming my half-formed idea into a tangible reality. We launched a brand, and soon, stores began to pop up across the city like wildflowers after a spring rain. I found myself immersed in designs and marketing plans, loving the creative chaos of it all. But Troyer Eurostrades' shadow still lingered. One morning, while I was grabbing coffee at a local market, he cornered me. Well, Vincent," he said, his voice slick with condescension. "Still playing house with the farmer? Or are you finally ready to pay me to keep your little secret?" I stiffened, carefully setting my coffee cup down. "You are Eurostrade re-bluffing." Troy, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You have nothing. He leaned in, a smug smirk playing on his lips. I know you are Euros trade not from here. I mean, not from this world. One word to Wesley, and this perfect little life of yours is over. His confidence was unnerving, but I forced a laugh. Go ahead. Tell him. Let Euros trade see who he chooses to believe. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs, not letting him see the tremor in my hands. I didn't Euros trade tell Wesley. Not right away. I was too afraid of breaking the fragile trust we had built. That night, I couldn't Euros trade settle, pacing the floor of our spacious new bedroom while Wesley watched me from the bed. Spit it out, he said finally, patting the mattress beside him. I hesitated, then sat down, the words tumbling out in a rushed, panicked confession. Wesley, I Euros trade am not Vincent. Not the Vincent from this world. I Euros I transmigrated. I Euros trade am someone else, from somewhere else entirely. The room was silent. I held my breath, bracing for disbelief, for anger, for the worst. Then he moved, pulling me into his arms, his breath warm against my hair. I know you are Euros trade not him, he said softly. The real Vincent was cold and selfish. You are Euros trade Euros different. You are Euros trade my Vincent. I don't Euros trade care where you came from. Tears I didn't Euros trade no I Euros trade been holding back began to fall. Tears of pure, unadulterated relief. You are Euros trade not mad. Mad, he let out a low, warm laugh. You are Euros trade the best thing that has ever happened to me. He kissed me then, slow and deep and full of a certainty that washed away the last of my fear. Months later, our brand was a national success. I was studying for my college entrance exams, pursuing a future I had never dared to dream of. Wesley Euros trade's business empire continued to grow, expanding from clothing into technology. One evening at dinner, Tim casually mentioned Troy. I heard he Euros trade's working some dead-end job in a factory, she said, slicing into a potato. Married some guy who yells at him constantly. Wesley just grunted, peeling an apple for me with his pocket knife. Good. Less trouble for us. I raised an eyebrow at him and he sighed. He tried to stir up some trouble a while back. I had some of my Geyser Euros persuade him to leave us alone. I didn't Euros trade want you to worry. I laughed, swatting his arm playfully. You could have told me. Next time, he said, giving me a quick wink. I rolled my eyes, but I leaned against him, a comfortable warmth spreading through my chest. Later that night, we stood on the balcony of our home, the sprawling city lights twinkling below us like a carpet of fallen stars. I kissed him, tasting the faint sweetness of apple on his lips. He pulled me close, murmuring against my skin, "Missed you today." I grinned, turning in his arms to face him. Missed you more. The stars above seemed to belong to us, and for the first time in this life or the last, I wasn't Euros trade running from anything. I was finally, truly home, and so, the man who fell into a story he was meant to die in, found not only his survival, but a love that saw past every secret and every scar. He rewrote his destiny, not with a magical system or a cheat code, but with honesty, courage, and the unwavering acceptance of a man who saw him as a treasure. What did you think of Wesley Euros trade's reaction to Vincent Euros trade's secrets? Was his unconditional love what you expected, or did it surprise you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this journey of discovery and devotion, Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that will capture your heart. We Euros Trade LL. See you in the next one.